लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया। थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का डील किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? Just add to cart and buy.
तो ये सब EMI पे?
बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया। थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का डील किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? Just add to cart and buy.
तो ये सब EMI पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या फिर बेगूसराय,
या फिर बेगूसराय।
नए घर के लिए चाहिए 4K टीवी हाई फाई, या फिर वाइफ को चाहिए लेटेस्ट स्टाइल। EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
मॉड्यूलर किचन में पुराना फ्रिज क्यों है भाई?
शादी है नहीं, मैट्रेस पुराना है भाई। अक्खा इंडिया बोले भाई प्राइजेस है हाई। बेस्ट ही खरीदना है तो अपने EMI स्टोर पर आए।
EMI है ना, EMI।
अब काशी हो या वाशी, महंगा लगे तो EMI और बेस्ट ही चाहिए तो भी EMI, क्योंकि बजाज फिनसर्व का EMI है ना। विजिट www.emistore.com।
EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। इंश्योरेंस फ्रॉड से बचना है बहुत जरूरी जी। वो एजेंट है या फ्रॉड पता लगाओ जी। एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर के झांसे में कहीं फंस ना जाओ जी। अगर कोई अनजान कॉलर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी डिटेल्स मांगे तो कह देना उनको मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी। Always verify the caller and do not surrender your insurance for attractive offers. हमेशा सावधान रहे, safe रहे. Issued in the interest of public awareness by Bajaj Finserv. धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। जो होगा सो होगा, ऐसे ना सोचो जी। कॉल पे कोई पूछे OTP दो ना जी, तो कह देना उनको मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी।
Being a hero is all about heart. It's not about ruling the world. It's about owning it. It's not about winning a race. It's about delivering a smile to the human race. It's about a spirit that just cannot be confined by geographies. It's about the heart that beats for the future and a soul that echoes the values of generations. And yet, being a hero is never about the hero. It's about the millions who celebrate them. Hero Motorcorp, the motorcycle leader. There's a gush of wind that hums a sweet song. There's a gush of wind that fights like a hero to fill the world with possibility. There's a gush of wind that jumps across oceans and mountains, embracing the entire planet. There's a gush of wind that blows away darkness. There's a gush of wind that blows for humanity. Because at Hero, we care.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Our today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Our today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
Behold, the story of victory, of life over malady. Behold the saga of power, of science over sickness. Behold the tale of triumph, of dedication over disease. Behold the rise and rise of Cadila Pharmaceuticals Limited, one of India's largest privately held pharmaceutical companies based out of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, India. Cadila Pharmaceuticals was born out of the vision of a legend who left an indelible mark in the chronicles of Indian pharmaceuticals industry. He was Indravadan Ambalal Modi, the founder chairman of the company, rightfully christened as the Medicine Man of India. His vision to alleviate pain of the underprivileged through research-driven innovations has been driving Cadila Pharmaceuticals for more than 6 decades now. Innovations which are backed by the key strengths of the company, the state-of-the-art manufacturing and research facilities. The flagship manufacturing facility at Dholka, Gujarat, sprawls over 100 acres. This avant-garde facility is US FDA approved, besides meeting most of the stringent quality standards across the globe. It manufactures tablets, capsules, injectables, liquids, and orals. The second formulations manufacturing facility is located at Samba in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The API facilities at Ankleshwar, Gujarat, manufacture a large number of key APIs and intermediates at this US FDA and ISO 9002 and ISO 14001 accredited plant. The company also has set up its first ever overseas formulation manufacturing facility at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. This world-class facility is the only WHO CGMP compliant manufacturing facility in the region. More than 850 products spread across 12 specialties with many of India's top brands in its basket. Great goals are defined by far-sighted vision and achieved by seamless teamwork. A multicultural, multilingual and multinational workforce of over 7,000 employees is truly the propelling power of the company. Not just in the domestic market, the company has a wide global footprint with over 1,000 marketing authorizations across 85 countries. Its international sales force of over 150 highly diversified and versatile personnel lends it an outreach that blankets the globe. As the company grows, so does its commitment to research. Manned by more than 350 scientists, the R&D facilities of Cadila Pharmaceuticals at Dholka, Gujarat is an institution of breakthrough innovations. To take the focus on innovation to the next level, it partners with leading international companies to discover newer treatments. The Cadila Pharmaceuticals group is gigantic. Its group companies complement and expand the dynamic vision of the company across new avenues of healthcare and newer fast-paced business areas. Cadila Pharmaceuticals is a gentle giant. Decades of dedicated research, groundbreaking healthcare innovations, and worldwide impact proves the infinite potential of one powerful emotion. Care. The success of Cadila Pharmaceuticals bears testimony to the fact that the care continues.
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया। थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का दिल किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? जस्ट ऐड टू कार्ट एंड बाय।
तो ये सब ईएमआई पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या
we start with your permission?
I'm absolutely okay. How's the summit going so far?
Very good. Good response actually. Large number of countries, close to about 100 countries, and 6,000 people, but they don't come all together. But which is good on the bandwidth that we have. It's been good and very good.
Indeed, yeah. Very good. Well, I'm ready to start whenever you are.
Thank you. We'll start off. This is the first session of the day. And ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, good morning to everyone in India and in Singapore. This hour, I'm not too sure we have many participants from the Western world. So I am probably morning to most of the people who's attending. We have with us a very important, if I can say, of India, and of course the CII, Excellency Mr. Iswaran, the Minister for Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations of Singapore. In conversation with him will be also Mr. TV Narendran, the President of the CII. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's such a great pleasure and an honor. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's such a great pleasure and an honor to always have Minister Iswaran with us, and he is no stranger to the Partnership Summit, and he has been times over before, and it's always great to have his participation in his ideas, his inputs, because that really defines for us as an institution a lot of work that we do between our two countries. This year's summit, as I was mentioning to you, Mr. Minister, we have a very good participation from across the world, and across 3 days. Actually, we started day before yesterday, and today is the last day. We have had 50 sessions in which more than 200 global leaders, CEOs, ministers, policymakers, think tanks are sharing their perspectives in different sessions, and these are all possible. Of course, we are having it in a digital format, but we do wish to go back to a physical format definitely by next year, because we do want to meet in person. And also, I'd like to, this particular group that's attending here, this, as you see, just about 600 plus at this moment, and this is going to increase as in the next few minutes. This group is actually no stranger, knows Mr. Iswaran very well. But just as I mentioned, he is currently the Minister for Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. Previously, he's held many positions, very critical positions. He's also held ministerial positions in the Ministry of Communication and Information, the Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Education, and many ideas from him over the years whenever we have visited Singapore since 1994 as a core group from CII. The CII core group has been visiting annually, and every time your guidance has been of great value. And this year, sir, we just wanted to tell you that since your interactions with the core group, we have changed, if I can say, our strategy a little bit with Singapore, somewhat to ensure that there are projects to work on together. And this is being done now across several sectors. And you had mentioned to us about certain sectors and certain projects, and we have. I'm glad to say that we are on way. We are doing that, doing it very closely with our partners in Singapore, and we are glad to have Singapore on the CII Smart Manufacturing platform, bringing Singapore technology solutions to India. And we strongly all believe here that India and Singapore collaborations is a very core dimension, if one can say, not just for helping our people and businesses, but also ASEAN and Asia as a whole. So thank you very much, Mr. Iswaran, for being here. But one last point, I'd be really failing in my duty if I do not thank you for starting the VTL with India. Our members are truly happy with lifting of the travel restrictions, and the core group will now be happy to travel to Singapore. As I mentioned, that we would like to be there physically. We all miss Singapore, so this move is very much appreciated. With that, big thank you once again, and I'll move to Mr. TV Narendran. Naren, for your opening comments and for the conversation with the Honorable Minister. Naren?
Thank you, CB. I would also like to add my warm welcome to Minister Iswaran. He's always been a friend of India, friend of CII, and we've had the privilege of interacting with him multiple times, even more recently as part of the core group, as CB said. And I echo CB in thanking you for the VTLs. Again, this was a key point of discussion when we met last, and thank you for that. And we look forward to coming to Singapore. COVID-19, as we all know, has been devastating for the world in terms of lives and livelihoods, and much has been said about the impact and implications surrounding the pandemic. However, one good thing is that it has pushed global governments and businesses to rethink their agendas vis-a-vis the planet and the people. Environment, social, and governance has come into sharp focus. ESG is what everyone's talking about. There is more demand for stringent disclosures, reporting frameworks, and standards. With changing consumer awareness and preferences, more and more companies are pledging to reduce their carbon footprint, drive biodiversity-related commitments, and sustainability initiatives. Climate disasters are the next big challenge, and this pandemic is not only the challenge humanity will face, it is rather just a beginning, and how we respond will determine the fate of our future generations. The pandemic has also accelerated digitization, with companies around the world reinventing themselves and adapting to the evolving situation. The hardest hit are the small enterprises. In Indian industry, we have at present companies spanning industry 1.0 to 4.0. Smaller enterprises are the focus of a focus area for technology adoption, and CI is doing a lot to try and get our small members move up this maturity curve. What has also been significant is that in spite of the ongoing debate on benefits of globalization, there is renewed realization that global cooperation, commitment, and collaboration is needed for long-term sustainable recovery. We have a long way to go to be future ready, and there is a dire need for governments and businesses to come together to chart a path of inclusive growth. With that, it's my honor and privilege to invite Minister Iswaran to give his remarks before we start our discussion. Over to you, sir.
I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. TV Narendran, Mr. Banerjee, all our friends from the CII, distinguished guests, and those who are, all of you who are joining us from wherever in India, in Singapore, and elsewhere. Very good morning from Singapore. First, thank you for inviting me to be a part of the CII Partnership Summit. The theme of partnering for building a new world, growth, competitiveness, sustainability, and technology, I think is quite apt, especially because it comes in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as we all know, has disrupted lives and livelihoods, jobs, and business models. As the world endeavors to recover from the pandemic and deal with new variants such as Omicron, this summit, I think, can help to chart the way forward as we strive to build a global economy that is more responsive to changing economic realities and the evolving needs of our people. So I thought I'll take the next 5-10 minutes to outline some thoughts, especially with respect to how bilateral ties between India and Singapore have evolved and can evolve. And then I'm looking forward to the exchange over the Q&A. So as we all know, Singapore and India share a deep and multifaceted relationship between our governments, our businesses, and our people, certainly. And in our 56 years of bilateral relations, we have steadfastly deepened our trade relations and successfully collaborated on numerous projects. And importantly, we have persevered in this effort through these past 2 quite difficult years. We have continued regular conversations virtually between our governments and businesses, including through platforms like last year's and this year's Partnership Summit. And as you've heard from Mr. Banerjee and Mr. Narendran, we have basically continuing to engage with CII and many other business groups from India virtually. And now we hope that we can start having more physical interactions. And through our close partnership, we have ensured the continuous flow of essential supplies, such as rice and medical supplies, between our 2 countries. And most recently, we have worked towards the mutual recognition of the vaccination certificates of our 2 countries and the establishment of a vaccinated travel lane, which will allow connections between families and businesses to resume. And I'm very glad that, we're already seeing an uptick in the travel between India and Singapore. And this has only been possible because of the close cooperation between the governments on both sides. In Singapore, companies continue to recognize the potential of the Indian market and are committed to invest in India. A case in point is Singapore's e-commerce company Shopee. Since the commencement of Shopee's operations in India a few months ago, it has employed close to 300 staff members and onboarded over 20,000 local sellers in India. And this further strengthens the economic and people-to-people links between our two countries. Another company, Blue Planet, which is an end-to-end sustainable waste management company, provides technologies and services across the entire life cycle of waste management. They have over 15 projects throughout India and were recently awarded one to convert a massive 200-acre landfill in Chennai into a green belt. The project, when completed, will sort, recycle, or upcycle up to 3.5 million tons of waste that have been dumped there over 3 decades. As we take stock of our partnerships and look to the future, there are other pressing problems that demand our attention. The climate crisis is an existential threat. The pandemic has underscored the importance of establishing resilient global supply chains and the need for innovation and accelerated digital adoption. So I would like to share 3 areas in which India and Singapore can forge enduring partnerships in the coming years. The areas being sustainability, the digital economy, and connectivity. And let me elaborate on each in turn. First, sustainability. Both India and Singapore have recognized the danger of the climate crisis and made national commitments to reduce carbon emissions. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced at COP26 India's commitment to achieve net zero by 2070. And he also highlighted the importance of financing and affordable climate technologies. Though we are a small island nation with limited renewable energy potential, Singapore is also committed to global climate action. In February this year, we launched the Singapore Green Plan. It lays out ambitious and concrete targets for the next 10 years to advance our national sustainable development agenda. Singapore companies have also participated in India's sustainability story across different facets, such as renewable energy, smart city development, and water management. Samcorp's recent 180 megawatt wind power project in Karnataka and the 400 megawatt solar project in Rajasthan, which was awarded in January this year, are testament to their competitiveness and commitment to renewables. And Samcorp's renewable energy capacity in India is now more than 2.3 gigawatts, representing a significant part of their global portfolio. In the next phase of development, Singapore and India can cooperate on various upstream initiatives to accelerate research and development of low-carbon technology solutions. India's recently announced National Hydrogen Mission offers much scope for mutually beneficial collaboration between our businesses, research institutes, and governments. We can also jointly avail financing for green infrastructure and initiatives. Public capital alone is insufficient to meet the immense financing needs of the transition to a sustainable economy. To mobilize the required private funding, our two countries can cooperate to deepen Asia-focused sustainable financial expertise, co-create solutions to spur green finance adoption, and integrate sustainability considerations into financing decisions. The second area is the digital economy, which holds tremendous potential. India's digital economy is expected to be worth a quite staggering $1 trillion by 2027. And Southeast Asia's is expected to exceed $360 billion by 2025. Digital technologies have democratized economies, empowering SMEs and people across the globe. Hence, to enhance access to digital opportunities, it is vital that we establish common rules and policies to foster interoperability and closer digital links. India is focused on developing policies to strengthen digital infrastructure, including a robust framework for data governance. Singapore, in turn, has embarked on digital economy agreements, which facilitate seamless end-to-end digital trade, enable the open and trusted use of data, and ultimately build trust in digital systems, which is the key foundation to grow the digital economy. We're already cooperating in this area. For example, earlier this year, our central banks announced plans to link our digital payment systems to enable instant low-cost fund transfers. This will further catalyze the substantial trade, travel, and remittance flows between our two countries. Moving forward, we can together help to narrow, if not eliminate, the gulf between the digital haves and have-nots. We can work together, and indeed we must work together to build digitally inclusive communities through cooperation and capacity building. And we also look forward to the finalization and passing of India's Personal Data Protection Bill, which will promote increased and meaningful participation in the digital economy. It is also important that policymakers on all sides work with industry to lay the foundations for digital frameworks of the future, with elements such as digital identity, digital payment solutions, data exchange, data authorization, and consent. And that brings me to my final point, connectivity. Global supply chains have been disrupted since the start of the pandemic. As a trade-dependent country, Singapore has not been immune to these disruptions. Nevertheless, we have kept our ceilings open throughout the height of the pandemic, served as a catch-up port so that shipping lines have been able to make up for lost time elsewhere through our port in Singapore, and facilitated the regional distribution of essential goods and vaccines by working with partners, including the Port of Singapore Authority. Singapore recognizes the important role of various stakeholders in alleviating the issues faced by shipping companies and shippers. We therefore look forward to strengthening our partnerships with public and private sector stakeholders, including in India, to build more resilient global supply chains. For example, PSA's Bharat Mumbai Container Terminal recently attained the milestone of having handled 3 million TEUs since the start of its operations in 2018. Despite recent supply chain disruptions, PSA Mumbai continues to help alleviate delays in vessel schedules. This year, it has accommodated more than 100 ad hoc vessel calls from other terminals, keeping goods flowing to and from India. So it's an important part of that global network of ports and the supply chain. Moving forward, we can contribute together to setting global standards for the safety, security, and environmental performance of international shipping. As fellow IMO Council members, the elections were just held last week, and we are both fellow members of the Council. We must prepare for the future of shipping in the key areas of maritime safety, decarbonization, and digitalization. Also, India and Singapore are both contracting parties to the Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combating Piracy and Armed Robbery Against Ships in Asia, or RECAP for short. As the host country of the RECAP Information Sharing Center, we warmly congratulate Mr. Krishnaswamy Natarajan, Director General of the Indian Coast Guard, on being successfully appointed as the 6th Executive Director of the RECAP Information Sharing Center in August this year. RECAP is an essential component of international efforts to combat piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia. And we remain committed to work with India and other contracting partners and parties to achieve RECAP ISC's objectives as a center of excellence in information sharing. So if I may conclude, India and Singapore's bilateral economic relations are strong and multifaceted. As we emerge from this pandemic and contend with other global challenges like the climate crisis, the future of healthcare, maintaining resilient supply chains, and adapting to new economic models, I am confident that the India-Singapore partnership is on a firm footing and well placed to pursue new areas of cooperation aimed at addressing these crucial challenges. So I look forward to the next 5 decades of friendship and beyond between Singapore and India as we forge partnerships with a focus on growth, sustainability, and innovation and technology for the betterment of our two countries and our peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Wonderful. I'm going to start, and then, between CB and me, we have a few questions for you. So can I start? Yeah. Okay. As you mentioned, India has made big commitments in carbon reduction, recently, both short term and long term. And Indian industry is also making significant progress. CII is at the forefront of driving this change with the industry. And it views these commitments as an opportunity also to inculcate sustainability actions across operations for industry. So keeping this global agenda in mind, how can countries partner across government and industry? Any ideas, suggestions, and what is it that India and Singapore can focus on? I know you said sustainability is one of the 3 items, but just some more thoughts on that from you. Mr. Minister, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. First, I must say that I am sure there are many others on this call or in this conference who are much more qualified than me. But let me just outline a few areas where I think we can work together for mutual benefit. I think the key in terms of the key is to recognize that this is a global commons problem. This is not the issue of one country or one community. All of us are in it together. And so the solutions also lie in the global commons and how we come together to partner and help one another. So in that context, I would say that there are a few broad areas we can work on. One is certainly in the area of technology. A case in point is, carbon capture, utilization, sequestration. The reason why this is important is that even as we make transitions, energy transitions to renewables and so on, the fact is that fossil fuel-based energy solutions are going to remain in the mix for some time. We are migrating towards cleaner versions of them, but they still remain in the energy mix. And so there will still be carbon emissions arising from these. And we need to find solutions. And part of that solution mix is really technology such as CCUS and how we are able to harness this technology working together. And the key in working together is we are able to not just bring together our mutual capabilities, but also aggregate scale, because ultimately these solutions need to be applied at scale to be viable. So I would say technology is one area we should work on. If you think about hydrogen, for example, of course, everyone wants to work towards green hydrogen, but in many cases, even blue hydrogen is an important solution. And that means having a carbon solution for the way the hydrogen is being produced. So, and the carbon capture storage becomes a part of that. So we do need to find technological solutions and then to be able to apply them at scale. And therefore, bringing our mutual capabilities together and also our markets so that solutions can be scaled up and therefore achieve commercial viability, I think is going to be key. Another area I would say is, when you're looking at the whole nature of, carbon trading, offsets, that's going to be an important part of the equation because we are looking for a global optimization and therefore you need to find solutions across the board. So this is where I think working together on creating the markets, the standards, so that there's interoperability and trust. This is again an area we can work together. And this is not just Singapore and India. I think the larger group of ASEAN countries and indeed Asia and global solutions. But we may need to work on this through, building blocks. But a key building block would be, because where there is a significant demand for energy, and this is particularly the case for India and Southeast Asia because of the growth that we anticipate, and the growth will need to be fueled by energy sources. And therefore, I think finding those sorts of market-based solutions for offsets and reductions, I think is going to be another key part of the equation. I can go on in terms of other sectors, like, for example, in maritime and aviation, but I think you get the point, and I don't want to dwell on it unless we want to take it up. The last area I would say, a point I made in my speech, but I would be happy, I think it's important, is financing. Because we do need to unlock private capital as much as public funding for these kinds of solutions. And this is, again, an area where Singapore as a financial center, and of course India with its vast economy and also its own sort of financial centers, including Mumbai and so on, we can work together to see how new sort of green financing solutions can be created and utilized in order to facilitate the implementation of some of these essential green solutions. And I think we all know that, not all of these, you will need patient capital in some instances. And that's all the more why I think the collaboration between countries, which are both on the supply side and the demand side of such capital, green financing capital needs, is essential.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm going to need to ask a question and then come back with another one.
No. I actually thanks to Mr. Minister for that beautiful. Actually, I was about to ask you about green financing and really covered it. So I'm going to change the topic a little bit and towards Gati Shakti, PM Gati Shakti. We feel that's a very, very important.
Chandrajit, you're a little breaking. I don't know whether I'm the only one having the problem. If you could just repeat your what you just said, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So some echo coming just and
Minister, if I may, I think you have to be on mute. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah. And now can you hear us? Can you hear me clearly? Yeah. So thank you, Minister. I just wanted to change the subject a little bit and go to another completely different area. But amongst the three broad areas that you really covered, and I want to talk about Gati Shakti, the PM Gati Shakti, which is a very important initiative which has now got rolled out in India, which has been focusing on last mile connectivity, and basically this will strongly boost the infrastructure around the country, and of course with an eye towards a resilient supply chain and export. We have been actually working very closely with SIPO on logistics collaboration from joint certification. We are now exploring commercial projects such as multimodal logistics park and areas where India really wants to strengthen its ecosystem, such as packaging. So according to you, Mr. Minister, what should be the areas of focus for India to expand our collaboration with Singapore, the logistics and infrastructure space, and how can our two countries, what can we do together to boost trade and connectivity in the region? You touched upon it when you spoke, but I just wanted to ask it categorically.
Thanks, Chandrajit, for that question. Again, I'm sure there are many participants here who will have diverse thoughts on this, but let me I think what we have, if we weren't already aware of this, the pandemic has made this quite stark, that supply chain resilience is a key part of any country's strategy for economic resilience, and indeed even social resilience because of essential supplies and so on. But what is important to recognize then is that supply chain resilience, I think, I would make 2 points on the issue of logistics and supply chain resilience. First is that this is a network. It is not 1 point or 2 points, but it's a network of resilience that we need. Because like if any resilient network, there must be the potential to pivot from one track to another if one track appears to be having problems. And that means you must have different nodes in the network which can come in and absorb the spare capacity, which is what I was elaborating about, say, what PSA was doing, not just in Singapore, but even in Mumbai. Because there were, as we all know, there were periods during this last 2 years when there were significant disruptions in shipping, for example, in the Suez Canal, some of the ports, and so on. And the shipping lines had to find alternative solutions so that they could go somewhere else, either make up for lost time or also find new ways to connect the cargo, etc. And this is where the network solutioning is very important. So whether it is PSA Mumbai, the ports there, the port in Singapore, but also ports elsewhere, we really need to find ways to tighten the linkage between them so that that resilience is enhanced. And this is why so this is, I think, an area where we can work together. And certainly it's not just about commercial partnerships, but also, I think, digital linkages. Because ultimately, to be able to make those sorts of pivots operationally and quickly, you do need the information that is up to date and to be able to respond in a nimble way. And that means digitalization and the digital connectivity is key. It goes hand in hand. So that's one part, the network effect. And, the same could be argued for our airports as well. Because I think, again, air connectivity, especially for certain types of high value products, becomes quite critical. And you want to be able to ensure that any disruption can be compensated through alternative channels. The other area I wanted to emphasize was, I think when we talk about supply chain resilience, we do need to think about multimodal solutions. So it's not just resilience in shipping or resilience in air traffic or resilience on the road, but really it's end-to-end resilience. And therefore, the more we can do to bring the different modalities to work together seamlessly, I think, so in other words, from the aviation to the shipping and the ports to the trucking or the trains and vice versa, we need those to be able to work seamlessly. And this again means two things. One is operating at a system level and not just at a sector level. And secondly, having information overlays or digital overlays that will allow this to happen. So we're working on some ideas on this in order to create a common data infrastructure in Singapore, for example. I believe Tan Chong Meng, our PSA chief, is going to be speaking or has already spoken at one of your sessions. And he will be able to elaborate further because he is quite actively involved with us in this. But the essential point is we need to think about multimodal solutions. And again, this is where Singapore and India can work together, partly because Singapore businesses have a presence in India and India businesses have a presence in Singapore. So we have a need and the capability and opportunity to do something about this. So the two things I would say about supply chain resilience, to reiterate, one is, I think, network resilience within the verticals, the shipping and ports, or the maritime, the aviation, and of course, land and rail. But the other is the intermodal or multimodal sort of solutions. I think that's going to be key as well. And it's an area that we are focused on in Singapore. I know that there is a focus on this in the rest of the world, including in India, and I think we can make common cause here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you, CB. I'm then going to move into the digital economy, taking on from your comments on the digital side. As you mentioned, the Indian economy is expected to be a staggering 1 trillion in the next 5 to 6 years, the digital economy in India. And India is working on its framework for data governance, including feasible frameworks for cross-border data flows. And there is an ongoing debate, internal debate on protecting domestic interests and opening the digital economy, given the scale of India's markets and the opportunities therein. Obviously, India can play a catalyzing role in setting the rules or participating in the rule setting for global trade. Singapore has signed digital trade agreements with a few nations, including Chile, New Zealand, Australia, and is also in talks with the UK. So, given all these agreements, what are the learnings and benefits which may be useful for us to know as well?
So let me first say that I think the work that we are doing in the digital domain is really the next frontier for economic growth. Because we have traditionally, when you talk about our free trade agreements or other kinds of relationships, India has them, we have them, and so on. It has really been around the flow of goods, flow of capital, flow of services, etc. But we really need to now move into the digital domain and the flow of bits and bytes and data. And this is not only because, it is some fancy thing or something that's the fad for the day. Actually, we all know, and that's why I made the point in my speech, digitalization is a great democratizer of the economy. There's just no two ways about it. If you think about what digitalization has enabled, it has enabled the small business in Mumbai to now access global markets, find partners anywhere in the world, and find solutions for either its production needs or markets for its products on a global basis. Now, that is a significant thing because what it now means is businesses can be born global, and in fact, individuals can operate globally. That's also why, even the working norms are changing, right? In terms of, it's not just work from home, it's from work from anywhere, in a sense. So when we are in this kind of environment, and this is really going to be an integral part of our collective economic future, it's important that the regulatory architecture supports it and does not hinder it. So we have embarked on these digital economy agreements in order to really address some of the key issues that we think will help give businesses greater certainty, reduce costs, and hopefully pave the way for the future. And by these agreements, by the way, are by no means comprehensive in the sense that they address as many issues as they can today, but this is a very dynamic space. And what we really need to understand is that we must constantly be working on this and keeping up to date. So let me illustrate by what I mean by this. Just for the record, by the way, I just came back from Europe on this weekend, and we have just substantially concluded the digital economy agreement with the UK. And we have also announced the commencement of a digital economy partnership process with the European Union. So we are building on what we already have, and we are in conversation with others like Korea and so on. And we will continue to build on this with like-minded partners. And India is one that we would certainly like to do this with. But what is the advantage? Well, I can point to three areas broadly. First is around the whole aspect of trade facilitation. So once you're able to have e-invoicing, digitalized bills of lading, and the connectivity that goes across borders, accompanying the flow of goods. Those of you who are involved in the business of logistics or trade cross-border, you will know this. From the time a consignment leaves a manufacturer's warehouse to the trucker, to the shipper, to the customs, and then it clears and goes to the other side and customs and all over again. And then the financial entity also needs to have sight of all of this. All of these are paper transactions, and every one of them has the potential for errors, for all kinds of fraud possibilities, etc. So the wastage and the cost is high, and the efficiency loss is not insignificant. So what it really enables us to do is now using your blockchain technologies and so on, you're able to create far greater visibility and certainty as a result across the value chain. And that can only be good news for businesses and everyone involved in the entire chain when you're talking about the movement of goods. A second area is around data. I think in the end, we do need to think about how data can flow across countries. India is a big country. I know you generate a great deal of data domestically. And so, of course, there are, as you pointed out, Narendran, there will be some concerns around, well, what about our domestic interests? But I think what we ought to be clear about is, data, I have made this point before, we should not think of data as a perishable resource. It's certainly not good to say data is like oil, because oil, once you've consumed it, is gone. Actually, data is quite the converse. Data increases in value as you aggregate it, as you organize it, as you derive insights from it. And that value only accretes as we do more, facilitate more flows of this data. So yes, India has got a vast database, but India's database pertains to the patterns within India. But there may be other benefits and values to be had by aggregating data in India with data from other parts of the world. And this is beneficial not just for the big multinationals, I'm talking about for Indian businesses. Because if you go back to the original proposition, Indian businesses are increasingly cross-border, and I'm talking about not just the big players, but even the SMEs. So they too will want to be able to have data flow across. So I think the way to approach this is the concerns around data security are legitimate, concerns about privacy are legitimate, but they should not be insurmountable stumbling blocks. Rather, what we should be thinking in terms of is how we can create regulatory structures and other mechanisms that can allow these flows to take place with confidence. Confidence for businesses, or certainty for businesses, and confidence and trust for the individuals. So this is, I think, an area where it's not a 0-1, it's not binary. I tell many of the businesses this, it's not a case of either you have no data flow or you have all data flow. I think we can move on this. We need to think about it almost like a data taxonomy and start by thinking which are the sort of baseline set of data, for example, machine generated data that can flow. And then we can go beyond that and talk about what are, say, personal data that can be anonymized and beyond. So this is an area we should be working on, just to touch. And just very quickly, a third area, which is all the emerging areas around artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics and so on, physics and so on, and the quantum analytics. I think all of these areas, we also need to start working together. But this is an evolving space, and hence my point that we can't take what we have today as the final formulation. We have to keep evolving with the changing circumstances. A bit long, sorry, but I thought I should give you a compliment.
Thank you, Mr. But I have a follow-up question on the same space. So there are a lot of positives, as you said. It democratizes, it empowers. But on the flip side, there is a concern also of the monopoly of the tech giants, cybercrime, privacy issues, and disruption of the traditional economy. So there are socioeconomic consequences. And so how do you think, as governments and as industry, we should go about it?
So I think that's a very good point, Narendran. But in a way, this is not uncharted waters for us. The same problem arose with globalization. We are now just dealing with it in a new phase in digitalization. Because with globalization, what were we doing? We were opening up our markets. And certainly when you globalize an economy, there will be winners and there will be losers. And so you can't just pursue a globalization strategy without a complementary domestic economic strategy that raises the capabilities of your businesses, that raises the skill levels of the people so that they can pivot into the new areas of opportunity. There will always be some disruption, but governments need to then do this. It has to be complementary. You can't just do globalization and then say, let the market sort itself out. It'll be far too disruptive for many. The same argument should be made for digitalization. The concerns are valid, but the concerns should not be veto factors, because in fact, the benefits to be had, we all know, are significant. And, we will be depriving our companies, our people of those opportunities. So the flip side then is to say, how do we bell this cat, you see? I mean, how do we pursue the path of digitalization, but complement that with strategies around, for people, skills are key, so that they can take up opportunities in the digital domain. It is an area that we are working on. It is not, it's not so straightforward, but it can be done, and we have seen it yielding successful outcomes in Singapore. We have a program in Singapore where our Infocom Media Development Authority, they have SMEs Go Digital, which is to help SMEs digitalize. And then we've got another program which is basically aimed at upskilling the digital capabilities of our workforce. So we do need to do this. And some of it is very retail, but it has to be done. So I think in digital as well, we need to find that the complement has to be both from the point of view of how we enhance the capabilities of businesses and people, and then putting in place appropriate regulatory infrastructure so that legitimate concerns are safeguarded, whether it is around privacy, around issues of security, etc. I think we need to put those things in place so that whether you're a global tech giant or a local unicorn, it doesn't matter. These are rules that you have to play by, and everybody plays by the same rules.
I'm going to hand over to CB for a question before I come back with some more. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Naren. Mr. Minister, I just wanted to, Singapore, of course, is the country coordinator for India-ASEAN relations. What are your priorities? What are Singapore's priorities as a coordinator, for the next few years? More importantly, what are the economic priorities in this space? And as businesses, what can we do to really take this, and deepen this economic partnership beyond? You spoke about digitization, which is very, very critical. What are the other critical sectors that you think that we should focus on together in ASEAN?
So, Chandrajit, I think your question is really what are the areas, certainly from Singapore's point of view, we think India and ASEAN can work closer together on. So we talked about digitalization, and I think the point has been well canvassed. And the only additional point I will make on this is that there are digital businesses growing in India. You know who they are, and they will want to broaden their footprint. And Southeast Asia, ASEAN, with its population of 600 plus million and its economy, which will be likely in aggregate the fourth largest in the world by 2030, I think it offers you a very interesting set of opportunities. Similarly, we have in our part of the world, in Southeast Asia, many unicorns. So I mentioned Shopee, but there are others from Indonesia, etc., and they are all going to be wanting to grow. So I think the digital connectivity and economic opportunity is significant, and therefore creating more digital bridges between India and ASEAN, I think is going to be an important area of work for us. Another area, again, so I mentioned about sustainability in my earlier remarks. And that, again, is, I think, an area we can move. Because firstly, India and Southeast Asia, we have a joint need on this. We need energy solutions for our growth. The energy solutions must sit within the larger green objectives, the climate objectives that we have all mapped out for ourselves. India and what Prime Minister Modi has already outlined. Singapore, we have said that we will halve our emissions by 2050, to about 33 million tons or whatever it is in that kind of. So I think all of us have goals. Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, all the economies, Vietnam, etc., they're all going to need to find solutions. So what it means is we have the whole area of sustainability in terms of finding first technology or practical solutions, whether it's in renewables, whether it is in carbon capture, storage, in hydrogen. I think these are areas we can work together. And it is an area, as I said earlier, it is something we can work together on, not only because, we have a need, but also because those who are involved in this space will see the opportunity to scale up in our respective markets, which are not insignificant. So I think sustainability is another key area of work. And then linked to sustainability will be financing, green financing, finding those sorts of solutions for that. So I think it's an important complement. We've covered that ground. And the last area I would highlight as something that so I take it, Chandrajit and everyone in CII, I take the need to have business connectivity as a given. You are CII, you should be doing, this is your bread and butter anyway. But so I'm talking about what are the areas we can focus on beyond this, right? So digitalization, green, both from sustainability and green financing. And I suppose the final area would be technology and innovation, creating more links between our centers of innovation, because let's face it, there's no such thing as an innovation that only applies to India or only applies to Indonesia. Because if it's an innovation that is successful, it will apply globally. So we really need to find ways to link innovation centers so that they can work on solutions which will have at least regional but potentially global application. And we are bringing together the best talent to do that. So those are three areas I would say that we can work on and we should be working on. And certainly CII and your large membership of businesses can play a big part in that.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm going to shift to another subject which is very important for both our countries, and that's on travel. Obviously, while things have opened up again, we are watching out for the new variant and its impact. So it's certainly going to be a long drawn-out battle, and I think there'll probably be more variants coming up later. So in such an evolving situation, obviously in India as well, and I'm sure in Singapore, aviation and hospitality are two sectors which have really taken a knock and not yet come anywhere close to where they were pre-pandemic. So, how do you think we should support such sectors? Very important for Singapore and increasingly important for India as well in this new normal and this new way of working. Yeah.
Narendran, you should have a specific section in your conference for this alone. We can but I think
sorry, I'm saying our colleagues from this sector say we don't make enough noise about it, so we thought we'll put it.
No, well, it's not just noise. I think it's a very legitimate point. There are, I mean, if you look at the impact of the pandemic, it has been quite uneven. Our experience in Singapore has been certain sectors like financial services, ICT, etc., actually have been relatively unscathed. They've been able to carry on and and grow quite well. And you can see, like, even in some areas like semiconductors and shipping, etc., with the big bounce back in freight rates and container rates and so on, it's all become very large. On the other hand, then there's a bunch of sectors which are a bit more domestically oriented, like retail, food and bev, and so on. Those have had a bit more of a choppy experience because there are when you put in certain measures, social measures, for example, it has obviously an impact on them. But it is unarguable that the sectors that have been the hardest hit have been aviation and the related travel and hospitality. So how can we help them is your question. And I think first, I mean, and the industry will be the first to say the best way to help them is to open up and allow travel and flow, right? I mean, that would be the ultimate. But I think even the industry players know, even if all the governments today say, all right, we're going to have no border restrictions, everyone can travel everywhere, there will be a lot of hesitation on the part of travelers. still, because the nature of the pandemic is such that it weighs heavily on people about the impact on their health and the health of their families and their colleagues and so on by undertaking such travel. So I think it is incumbent on all of us, not just the governments, but the industry and so on, that we find a path back, a careful, calibrated path back to safe travel, is the way I would describe it. And I think it is only by doing that that we can rebuild the confidence in travel and allow people to then say, okay, we can move around and start. And even then, there may be some permanent shifts in patterns, but I think it's too early to call that. So that is what we are trying to do in Singapore through our VTLs. Essentially, it was an effort to, so with vaccination, with testing protocols, etc. The idea is really to manage the risk, but more importantly, to build confidence in the airlines, in the airports, and also with the airport workers and the airline workers and the larger communities, right? Our populations, that this can be done and it can be done in a safe manner. I think that is key, because the worst thing that can happen is to go about this full tilt and then find ourselves in a state of bother, and then we have to reverse course. I think that's far more damaging. It's better to do this in a way that's progressive and calibrated, but always informed by the circumstances. So that's what we've been doing. And, in Singapore's context. So today, our Changi Airport volume, I would say, is around 10 to 15% of where it was pre-pandemic. So it's far, a long shot, a far cry from where it was. But it is also significantly different to where it was 6 months ago, right? So I think we have to look at it as part of a journey. Our Prime Minister has described it as learning to live with COVID and respecting the virus, but not fearing it. And that's exactly what we are trying to do here. Vaccination, boosting, testing protocols, all of these, and then safe management measures, protocols, mask wearing, etc. All these, I think, are part of the suite of things we need in order to be able to tackle this problem whilst opening the economy up progressively with confidence. So because this is going to take a bit more time, I think for aviation, for example, I mean, there are different estimates by industry players. Some say maybe by 2023, some say maybe a bit earlier, some say maybe a bit later. But whatever it is, it means we are still due for some period of challenge for the sector. So what we have tried to do is, initially there was a nationwide support for for all sectors, job support schemes. Then our government has progressively wound it down and only had some very specific targeted measures, for example, for aviation and so on. And we will continue to evaluate what is the way to help the sector. What we are very keen is to avoid is the erosion of the capability of the sector because of this economic pressures that they face at the moment. So we want to make sure that the skills, the capabilities that they have built up over decades are not lost because of this crisis of a few years. So that's our focal point. And I think this is where governments probably should be focusing their efforts. Even if you're going to use public resources to support, it should be with a view to preserving core capabilities in these sectors so that when the recovery or the rebound comes, and it will, they have the capacity to participate in it fully.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I think I'm conscious we are running out of time. You've given us 1 hour and we've made full use of it. Thank you as always for very insightful and candid articulation of your thoughts and ideas. I think we've always enjoyed these conversations and we look forward to many more, and hopefully next year as part of the core group, physically in the same room. So thank you so much for your support, your commitment. The Partnership Summit, as you heard, is very important for us, and your presence has really helped us in taking forward the discussions. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Narendran, and also Mr. Banerjee and everyone in the CII. first, let me just say that we deeply value the partnership with India, as you know, and from the highest levels of government all the way to the business community and people. And secondly, the partnership we have with the CII, it's a long-standing one, and and every time the core group comes, virtually or physically, we have good meetings. And I've personally benefited from a lot of our discussions. And I hope you found this useful, because I think even as we are dealing with the immediate challenges, which are not trivial, I think it's important that we don't lose sight of the longer term and the potential, because we must be, building the foundations now for that, so that when the recovery comes, because this too will pass and the recovery will come, and when it does, we should be ready for it. So thank you very much for the invitation, and it was a pleasure having the discussion with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.